Good evening. Tonight, I thought we're going to talk about the events on the political sphere here, which happened in the last few days since I made the last video. But before I'm going to start, I have to correct something from the video for the battlefield update. And as you can see, I wear glasses. And many years ago, when I was young, I was just nearsighted. I had one lens for far distances to see. With age came a change in the vision, and now I have multiple steps in my glasses, which makes it very difficult to read on the computer, because if I'm close, I have to look like this, and when I look far, I have to look like this. And on that map of the Ukraine, as you may have seen, is when you zoom in, the city names become larger, but they immediately pop back to the smaller size. And what I did is, I was talking about Mariupol, and I pointed to Melitopol, which is a city further to the west, I don't know, maybe 50 kilometers or so, maybe 100 kilometers. So I had mistaken, not really the city, because I meant Mariupol, because that's where it actually happened. But I pointed in the map inadvertently, because of this thing is, I had taken my glasses off to Melitopol. And the reason for this is because I'm watching, doing this video, my laptop with the zooming, and at the same time I have to look at my iPhone for the camera to see that I have the right thing in the view of what you're going to see in the video. So that makes it a little bit difficult. Hence, I couldn't read very well since the laptop was further away from me. I couldn't read it. So the next time I will be more precise with this, and I will make sure that I show you the exact location. Like I said, there's a lot of these city names are not familiar to me. They're familiar to me, but in the German spelling or the German pronunciation. Since we're doing this in English, I have to now relearn all of these Ukrainian cities in their English interpretation of the city name. And that becomes a little bit difficult, you know, like with Charkiv and Kharkiv and those things. And I'm not very familiar with I'm not at all familiar with the Ukrainian language, and to the same extent with the Russian language. I just wanted to point this out, since one of the viewers, had posted a comment. Since he had that deleted, unfortunately, I would have rather would have liked it if he would have left that comment. And I pointed that out. This is unfortunately what can happen, not on purpose, but this is the small things in life. When you get older, things become a little bit more difficult, to do versus when you're young, But that's enough crying for tonight. So tonight we have on the topic list the first little look at this on how Russia got to this point where they are right now. Then the other thing, of course, is the Azov special forces. That's how the Ukrainians like to call them. And, or the regiment, the Azov regiment. And then the NATO expansion with Finland and Sweden, and Turkey's objection to this. That's basically the three major topics what I wanted to share with you. And again, I'm trying to be as objective as possible, because this way people or viewers in other countries who are exposed to a lot of propaganda, one way, form, or shape, or the other, are going to be able to hopefully get a better understanding. My point in this entire thing is very neutral. And the reason for that is because I'm not really affiliated with any side in this. I'm a German living in the United States, and this for almost over 30 years now. And so I'm far removed from this. If I would not watch the news, if I wouldn't listen to the radio, if I wouldn't be online, I wouldn't even know that there is a war because there is no impact of this war to be felt here in Kansas City, except for the higher gas prices. But they had already another reason which started prior to this whole issue there in the Ukraine that had to do with the president, we or they, whoever elected in 2020, and his unwillingness to drill for oil, to bring more oil onto the market, to bring the prices down here in the United States. That is the real issue. While we're experiencing higher oil prices or higher gas prices and an aging infrastructure, if it comes to refineries, some of these refineries we have are 50, 60, 70 years old, and that costs a lot of money to maintain them. So there's a artificial inflation through the commodities market of the gasoline prices, because gasoline is sold on contracts here separate from oil. So oil does not necessarily have to reflect gasoline prices. That is RBOBB gas futures, which are sold for 87, and they're sky high at the moment. And this has to do with investors buying up these contracts and driving these prices up. They're artificially increased basically through trading. That is just on the side of this. Now, I'm watching other YouTube channels in Russia and in the Ukraine, and of course it is to get a balanced view, to see what each side has to say, how people are impacted by it. The Russians are impacted, the Ukrainians are of course very impacted by this stuff, and each one has their own viewpoint on this. And of course it is all very emotional, the stuff what you watch or what I watch, and you can see the anger towards each side, or the general thing. Basically it's not a good situation for anyone. And I don't think that the Russians are bad people, neither do I think that the Ukrainians are the biggest Nazis ever since Adolf Hitler departed this planet here, wherever he went, probably to hell. But for that matter, so we have to all see this in perspective. Now, let me get started. What I wanted to point out here is that this has been a long process. And what we're seeing now in Russia, especially in what I'm hearing from the Russian YouTubers, is the changes which are being implemented, where we heard the story now with Moskvich is going to be built in the Renault automotive plant in Moscow. They have left and turned that over for next to nothing to the government, to the Russian government, which turned it over to the city, something to that tune. And they will be building Moskvich there. The GAZ cars, GAZ, that is the Gorky automotive plant, which used to make the Volga. They're pretty much, they're going to have problems because of all the Bosch parts they have been putting in there. And the same is with the ZIL, ZIL. Now, I forgot the manufacturer of those cars. Those were the big state limousines. And then, of course, the new one now, Putin is driving. I forgot that name, too. This was Aurus Senate, the stretch version of it. Has all Bosch parts in it, and it was designed by Porsche. That's at least what is publicly stated. And that is the interesting part, and that's where I wanted to start it. The first noticeable change came in 2007 and 2008. The Russian Federation participated in a summit in Munich until that point, which was sponsored by NATO. That was a global event, and they were invited to it for dialogues and that sort of stuff. And the last time they attended was in 2007, and they broke this off in 2008 as the financial crisis unfolded. That was the interesting part. And I looked already back then at this, and I said something is changing. I could see this here in the United States, and I could see this in Russia, and I could see this in Europe, the way the news media started to report, there were global changes happening at this point. And this was also the year Obama got elected. And that was another interesting aspect in this. So we had the near collapse of the US currency. We had the Russian Federation, or Vladimir Putin, basically leaving the security conference, the NATO security conference, and the dialogue they had, and Obama getting elected in the same year. And so this was pretty interesting in this. What happened then in 2009 here in the United States was that we had entered a recession, and we were told here by the Democrats then, or by the financial markets, that this would be a jobless recovery, that the U.S. companies were not interested in hiring any people, and the unemployment was sky high at the time because there was a transition now in it to go full steam with manufacturing and production into China. So whatever had that came so convenient, this whole crash came there in 2008, that they could close down any manufacturing that had been left here and move that over as well, and everyone could blame just the recession on it, and well, we just have to do things differently. These were the big impacts. And the interesting thing is, I had gone from Hawaii back to in 2009 to New York City, and that has always been a Democratic city. In that case, we had Bloomberg as mayor when I went back there. And Bloomberg had started out as a Democrat, became a Republican while he was 3 times the mayor of New York, and then went back being a Democrat. And the interesting thing is that Bloomberg is one of these people who also always knows what's best for you. You don't have to think for yourself. He says that soda was not good, and the big cups we have, they were too big for us, so he wanted in New York City, soda could only be sold in small cups. This way people don't drink so much soda, and it is better for your health, and this whole bullshit. And then it just went apeshit from there. And the same thing with the smoking and this, that, and the other thing. These people, you know, I watched another YouTuber yesterday, and he said that the Soviet Union was like that. They think any person out of this left environment, they always think they know what's best for everyone else, but they can run anything. Basically, that's the reality. And then so the times changed. I went back then from New York first to Cleveland, then here to Kansas City. And I think it was by 2013 that Putin announced, or his office announced, that he would change vehicles, that he went to Aurus, A-U-R-U-S, I think that's how that car company is called, A-U-R-U-S. And they would build a brand new stretch limousine, presidential limousine, and this is going to be the high-end car. And it looks like somewhere a crossover between a Bentley and a Rolls Royce, you know, with the more front side of it. So, and it took quite a while, and I guess they went to Porsche to help them, and most of the technology in there, which is brakes and electronics and injection and everything else, is from Bosch. So I guess that car was finally done and delivered by 2018, 2019, somewhere in that range. And now he ditched his Mercedes. But the point was that they announced that they would go away from Mercedes. So the first change which was indicated was the leaving of the security conference in 2008. Then in 2013, the announcement that he would no longer, or he will be driving a Russian-made limousine again, not a ZIL, Z-I-L, but a, ours in this case, and so it would be Russian. So this all came to an end, and this was really before this whole Crimea thing ever transpired. So you can see for how long the actual strategy out of the Kremlin has been cooked up. I mean, this has been planned out for a substantial amount of time over a period of not just years, but decades. So that we're seeing now the war at this point, looking at the stages and how this all happened, what was announced publicly and what not, is not a surprise. This is a form of Russian nationalism, which the Soviet Union had. That is the part which is identical. If this is going to be better or not, we will see. The problem he got now is that for his hours, he cannot get any more parts because Bosch left also. They manufactured some parts in Russia for cars, but a lot of these parts he needed, they were manufactured somewhere else, not just in Germany, but in other European countries. And he cannot get them, which means the hours at this point is basically obsolete, which will lead us back that Vladimir Putin will probably have to drive or be driven in a Moskvich without airbags and without ABS, anti-lock braking system. Actually, this is a German word, and it means Anti-Blockiersystem, an anti-blocking system, so the tires can no longer lock up when you step on the brakes full power. They will release, and the tire never fully blocks or gets locked up. Besides the fuel injection systems and that sort of, EFI systems, that is all that came from Bosch on those cars. And the Volga cars, GAZ, is in the same position. Gorky Automotive Plant, that's basically what GAC is translated from Russian into English. So that's kind of on how this is going to transpire. My prediction is, with the way this is going and as carefully as this has been planned out by the governing body with Putin basically on top of it, if he's the brain of this, that might be questionable, but he's definitely the head figure in it, so to speak. The poster boy for this whole movement thing, whatever they have cooked up there. And they're going to probably revisit some of the stuff what they had in the Soviet Union. I shared with another YouTuber, if I was living in Russia at the moment, I think for me the time would have come to say I need to head for the exit. I would leave Russia at this point. I know this is not easy, but I left Germany and I moved to the United States, and I've been here for 30 years. And that, works fine. I didn't have to run away from anything. There's just things how things worked out. With that being said, of course it is hard to tell. I think that the looking at the currency situation with the ruble is, because of the ruble situation, is that the Putin's government is going to institute travel restrictions into foreign countries, similar to the way it was during the Soviet Union. That means anywhere where you have to travel with hard currency, it's going to be very difficult to do. You might be able to travel to countries like Uzbekistan, and Turkey seems to be probably the best gateway right now if you're trying to get into the Western world. Otherwise, there's going to be very limited countries where you can travel to with rubles, where you can actually exchange something or buy something for in a local currency, looking at the overall condition. If I would be interested in moving to Europe, the United States, New Zealand, Australia, anywhere in the more established Western world, I probably would do the first step into Turkey, since that is a NATO country, and then see what and how can be worked out with visas for what countries for Russian nationals, because that is really difficult right now at the moment because of all the sanctions involved in it. That's all I'm going to say to this. In terms of the products which were imported, I mean, Russia was a very lucrative market for mostly European companies, selling in there German, French, all of the more or less higher end and luxury products. They're going to be pretty much gone. I don't think that there will be any shortages as they had before, because the system is just different. If Putin's government allows business to be conducted by private people and companies, regular companies, if they're going to go back to everything state-owned, then it's going to look exactly the way it was back in the Soviet Union. That's all I'm going to say to that part. There's not going to be anything new there. I know from what I've read in biographies and things, Putin has actually said or written himself that he is a Leninist. And Leninist is somewhat different than a Marxist, and it is somewhat, in certain extents, more extreme, especially if it comes to controlling people and how to think for them, that they basically are mindless people, and they have to be, told what to do and what not to do and that sort of stuff, and how they can live. And that might be a direction, some form of Leninism might be the final goal here. That's speculative. But from what we have seen, this is the direction this goes. The other thing, so this was my thing, is on how we got there. Again, my belief is this has been planned for a long time, starting probably at 2000 or right around 9/11. Or it may have been already, decided when Boris Jeltzin was still in power and he got Vladimir Putin lifted into this position, that they decided to go this route of what we're seeing. This would have been in 1998, 99, and that would have gotten us now into the 20-25-year mark of this transition, which they did slowly. Now, the next topic we're going to touch here is the Azov Brigade, which has, to a certain extent, surrendered or were taken captive. Basically, either way, same difference. The injured soldiers were moved out, and so were whatever other military personnel was there. One thing for the outsider outside the Ukraine who hasn't followed the ongoing struggle there in the Donbas region since 2014, it is very confusing between armed police forces which are fighting, the National Guard they have, the Azov Brigade, which is part of the National Guard, and then the Ukrainian army. And then you have some other separatists and anti-separatist forces there in the Donbas region and that sort of stuff that makes it very confusing. And there's also with the uniforms, these people, don't have proper identifications on the uniform, that who is the person you're looking at, what is their rank, what military unit do they belong to. This is like a wild bunch of hog-run armed people, some form of a militia. That's what that looks like. There doesn't seem to be a real structure in it. Nothing. This is a disorganized ant nest is what the Russians are. Basically the same thing. You have no clue what you're looking at. You don't know whose vehicle is what is that. You're looking at videos. Everything looks the same. There's no clear thing. And then they're running around with duct tape marks, blue, yellow, silver, and who knows what else. You probably can put anything on there. So you really don't know who is fighting for what. There's no clear national identity in this. That's the most confusing part. I don't think I've seen a civil war would look something like this. This is what you would expect in a civil war. But in a war between two nations, that's why the Russians say this is not really a war, because you're just looking at your soldiers and the vehicles involved in this, and there is no war because it is really a civil war in that sense. So they're conducting a special military operation because technically this is not from what it appears. If you had fully marked uniforms, men in uniform with their names, rank, and unit identification, where they belong to, then you can say we're dealing with armed forces of a country which are defending their country. At this point, you have no clue. That is unbelievable. I've never seen this in any war or conflict we had, not even with the North Vietnamese. Even they had that uniforms at that point, or the North Koreans. This is the first time we have that kind of thing. Is good with the Taliban and in Afghanistan. You knew where they were, but you didn't know either what their military position was because they ran around in their traditional outfits, and were fighting like that. So this is when you deal with these kind of things. So this is all outside the realm of regular armed forces, structures and stuff like this. They may get there, may not get there. I had to say this because that's how I feel about this. This is a objective observation because you can't see it. I can see it. I don't know if anyone else can see it. If you're Ukrainian or Russian, you might be able to identify it, but for the outsider, it seems to be one big mix. Now, why I brought the Azov battalion up is the rhetoric which came out of the Pravda yesterday, which I read. And the Pravda quoted, and now I forgot the name, and that is the guy who leads the Russian delegation with the peace talks with the Ukrainians. That fellow made a statement. And he said he's glad that they were taken into custody in the DPK, that is the Donets Peoples Republic, DPR, Donets Peoples Republic. And the DPR does not belong or has signed the Geneva Convention, which means they don't have to abide by the treatment under the Geneva Convention of Prisoners of War, which means they can do whatever they want to do, basically. That's another one of these things. And you're looking at this, so that the Russians are as bad as anyone else. This is ridiculous, actually. But this is basically what we're dealing with. So he says now, they're going to be treated as prisoners of war, and they're going to be interrogated, and they're going to be this, that. So basically he's telling them, we're going to kill them, and we're going to, torture them, and all of this stuff is legal because the Donets Peoples Republic does not belong to the Geneva Convention. And I'm thinking about this. This is now the person who leads the delegation for the Russian Federation in peace talks with the Ukrainians. And this is published in the Pravda. So this is an official, more or less official newspaper, news organ in the Russian Federation. It has been around for a long time. And so I found that stunning because even with the Soviet Red Army and everything what they had to endure, at least the Wehrmacht was treated as prisoners of war to the best of their abilities. There was no real known abuse for the most soldiers. The SS may have experienced some special treatment, but they never captured a lot of SS people. I will get to that in a minute, why that was. So this is all very bizarre. So the Donets Peoples Republic, according to that delegation person, or the leader of that delegation for the peace talks, are going to make a law for death penalty with these people, so they could be tried. Probably not a fair trial, but they're going to be tried and then probably executed. This is what the goal is. This is what the guy said, plus the torch on top of it. He indicated this. If you can read in between lines and you know military language, then you know exactly what he was talking about. If Zelensky really believes that he's going to get these people back, that's going to be a far stretch. That's going to be either this is utterly naive, or I couldn't tell you this. If I see it, I believe it. Now, from what I understand, it was not just the Azov brigade or battalion, whatever they call it. You can't say this because the Russian used this regiment, the Azov regiment. The Ukrainians call it the Azov regiment, and the Russians call it the Azov brigade or Azov battalion. So I learned that difference. There's a difference. When you say it one way, that means you're pro-Ukrainian, and if you say it the other way, you're going to say then you're basically pro-Russian. The Azov special unit, now I'm completely out of it from either one of the two sides. The Azov special unit is also comprised, or there were people in that steel mill which were police forces, regular National Guard, and some Marines out of the Ukrainian army. So they would have to be sorted out of this. That is the composition of the POWs which went into POW status yesterday when they were picked up there. And how this is going to unfold, we will see. Now, I do not know on how protected that territory is, but you could launch a special operation basically with elite soldiers, if you have them, the Ukraine, and go in there and get all of these people out. This is probably what America would have done in this case, on a very large scale with immense firepower involved in it, that you would have the sky lit up day right over a 150-mile range probably. They would have set everything and anything on fire to get these people out of there. But this is the Ukraine, so they probably won't be able to do something like this on that scale. And that will close the chapter on the prisoners of war and the Azov special unit, which is now, or that part of them which went into POW status. There's obviously some more hauled up there in the steel plant. What I understand is the actual leaders of that special unit, and we will see for how long they're going to stay there and what they're going to do. We will have to wait and see how this is going to unfold. Now, the next thing in this is going to be now Finland and Sweden with NATO. And that's going to be another interesting thing. So both parliaments vote on it. It has major support in the public in both countries. And here comes Turkey and says no. Turkey says, well, Finland, or Sweden more so than Finland, is sympathetic to their PKK, I think it is. It's one of the left-wing organizations they have in Turkey, and they had for a long time, which have caused terroristic acts in Turkey and that sort of stuff. And there's from northern Turkey, basically in that region back there, and they have fought with the regular Turkish army, prolonged civil unrests and terror and that sort of stuff. This has gone on for a long time, 50, 60 years or something like this. And some of these people which Turkey wants to be tried, and imprisoned in Turkey, of the PKK are in Europe, in Germany, Finland, France. They all got basically granted immunity, or, the asylum, basically, political asylum. So they're not going to be deported into Turkey, and there has been always a squabble about this thing. On the other hand, as like I said earlier today, is Turkey is still very on better terms in this with Russia. For one is the Strait of Bosporus, where all of that traffic for the Black Sea fleet of the Russians has to go through if they want to go somewhere else, in and out. And that sort of stuff is controlled by Turkey as a NATO member. But they're allowing Turkey allows Russians to come into Turkey. I don't know, with a visa or without visa, or visas on short notice, something like this. And so that's at least a closer Western country than anything else at the moment to go to. And there seems to be ability of financial transactions, so the sanctions are not fully in place. They're also supplying weapons and drones and that sort of stuff to the Ukraine. So they're like in between all of this stuff. And Erdogan has been trying to build up his Ottoman Empire over there, or the reliving of the Ottoman Empire. So he has a similar dream of what Vladimir Putin and his guys have with the glorious Soviet days and that kind of thing. So they're kind of a little bit there. And then here in the United States, we got Donald Trump, which has the same idea with making America great again. So these are the three pretty much key figures in this whole populist movement thing around the globe. You know, other countries have followed, and that's kind of it. Yeah, that was the other thing is today, the Pravda, actually the Pravda quoted Rand Paul and Trump Jr. as, objecting to the payments of military aid from the United States to Ukraine because they got $40 billion now pending in the Senate to get approved, and the Republicans are not quite in tune with it because it is actually a contradiction of the MRGA movement, which is Make America Great Again, to spend that kind of money in a foreign country where that $40 billion could be used here better for us, for our purposes of what we need. So the Republicans, for a better part, are not that greatly interested in what Putin does over there, and especially with sending money or anything that costs money over to the Ukraine. That, of course, makes the Republicans very favorable for the Russians, especially for Vladimir Putin, because he looks at them, then he can do his thing, and we do our thing here, and then everyone gets whatever we want, basically. That is sort of the underlying issue in this. This is as much as I'm going to say. And Erdogan is basically in the same thing. So he's now not make America great again. He's trying to make Turkey great again. And in this thing is he's going to try to cook something up. And he's going to try to get something out of Moscow. He's going to try to get something out of America. And he's going to try to get something out of the other NATO countries or the European Union in that case. And it is usually money. That's what they're getting, euros. He gets paid for all of this stuff. He still has money coming in from all these dealings, from all the Syrian refugees and all these refugees from the Middle East to begin with, because they all wind up more or less on the border there, with Turkey, and then they have to come through Turkey into the European Union, and the European Union gave them the money to build these camps for these people on the Turkish side, and they're heavily guarded, and all of this stuff is still in the air there too. There's like 2 million people sitting in these refugees camps along the Syrian border there to Turkey. And Turkey really would like to intermingle in that whole war over there too, to get more property out of it, to make the Ottoman Empire bigger. And at the same time, they can't, because they're NATO members and the Russians are fighting that, so they didn't want to have a direct confrontation between a Russian military and Turkey military in a third country, in this case Syria, clashing together in this. So this has been a very difficult diplomatic, very difficult environment. So he's playing this every single way he can to with one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to get the most out of it for Turkey. That's the only thing, that's what's behind this. There's not much more to it. And Biden said he thinks that Turkey is going to come around. And Biden obviously does not understand the operation on how people like Trump or Erdogan or Putin operate. Is they're not coming around to anything. They got a plan, and they wouldn't make something great again, and they're going to go for this. That's basically it. And everything else is left in the dust, especially someone like Biden. For all three of them, Biden is basically a joke. looking at this. But so this is kind of it. So we will see on who's going to give what to Turkey and what Turkey really wants besides the PKK thing. This is right now only the smokescreen to immediately say no, but then the details, all of this is flexible and it depends on what the overall gain for Turkey is going to be in this. And like I said, they're already selling weapons at the same time to the Ukrainians, or drones and technology, while the Russians are trying to get through the Strait of Bosporus. And so they're dealing with the Russians, they're dealing with them. They have been involved with the peace talks. They're allowing Russian citizens to stay, who want to leave Russia, they can stay in Turkey, and so far and so on. So there's a lot of things going on behind the screens, and we will have to wait and see on how this is going to play out and see where that's at. I hope you enjoyed my video, and I hope I was able to provide some information or some insight into this, which you did not know earlier. And I hope that you were able to sit through the 42 minutes or 41 minutes of this video. And I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank you if you liked the video. I would like to thank you if you subscribe. And with that, you have a great evening.